We're meeting today and chatting today with Tonya Bruin of To Do Done. Tonya, welcome.
Thank you.
Happy to welcome you to the podcast. And we would love to chat with you about your business and how you got there. I went on the website and the opening line says, "Is a little customer service too much to ask for? We don't think so either." So that's an interesting opening salvo for your company's brand. Maybe you want to talk about that a bit.
Yeah, well, I didn't start in the construction industry. I was, my background is environmental policy and biology. So I started in the public service and spent many years in the public service. But being a homeowner, I always had things to be done around the house and typically didn't know how to do them. And had called many people over the years, and the customer service in like the sort of handyman, repair industry was abysmal. And that was kind of where I started with this idea of the company. Was like, I'm sure there's lots, like I knew there was lots of great people out there, lots of great tradespeople out there who could do the work, but they weren't trained in customer service, they weren't trained in marketing, they weren't trained in administration, and they don't do those pieces well. And I thought, if I could lead a team that can develop a system that can be better at customer service, then I can make the tradespeople shine and do their job better so that they don't have to worry about the other stuff. So that's kind of where I started, and I know that the experience was felt. I mean, anyone I talked to had a similar experience with tradespeople. So it was pretty universal. So that's kind of where we start on our website. It's like, you know what, we're going to call you back. we're actually going to show up on time. I mean, it's such a low bar, but at least you know that with us. And then we're going to take it. And so the whole premise of our brand is being champions of customer service. And so just taking it like, we're not just going to call you back. We're going to show up. We're going to do a great job. We're going to send you a thank you card at the end. We're going to, follow through, and we want to be your service provider for life. If you're living in a home, you're always going to have something. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the premise.
Yeah.
Tonya, it's a pretty unique evolution from working for as long as you did in public service. I think maybe more than 10 years, right?
Yeah, 16 years, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
To actually becoming an entrepreneur. And I mean, can you talk about, that particular leap? And were there any certain like moments along the way that really kind of made it easier for you to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit, and my husband as well. He's a serial entrepreneur, so and he has his own businesses that he's run and currently runs. But when he and I landed in Ottawa, I had a government position already. I'd already started working in the regions, and then they moved me to Ottawa for a management position here in Ottawa, and my husband had left his job in Vancouver. He left his job, and we moved here. And he said, "You know what? I'm going to start a green building store." And nothing like that existed in Canada. It was, eco-friendly building products, construction products. He knew nothing about this either. But hey, we were in our 20s, and we had, we had a lot of drive and interest in just doing something different. And so we started Canada's first green building store. It was random, but it worked. Within a couple of years, we were doing 1.2 million in sales, and we sold it 3 years later. That was when we had our first child. And running a retail store wasn't all it was cracked up to be. We just learned a lot, and it was exciting and interesting, and it wasn't exactly what we were looking for, but we just did it. We did it on a shoestring. We did it with no funding. We just did it. And then we had a couple kids, and the government job that I had was stable, and and steady and exactly what I needed at that point in my life. But I always had this kind of entrepreneurial bent, and the stuff that my husband was doing in his work life was interesting and exciting. And we would sit around the kitchen table in the evenings designing marketing schemes and doing interesting things. And I would go to my day job and not be as excited. So, and I had lots of ideas that I would bring to the table at my day job in the government, and a lot of times I would just get kind of shut down, or great idea, can't do that, And so I sort of always had in the back of my mind that I wanted to do something entrepreneurial, and I would say I was really inspired by 1-800-GOT-JUNK, which we saw kind of grow up in Vancouver. They were, their service industry, obviously, they collect people's garbage,
Right.
people's junk. But they branded themselves and, showed up in the branded vehicles and the branded shirts, and they showed up on time, and they were, they were treated with respect, and they were treating the clients with respect, and getting rid of their stuff for them. And I just thought I could just see like what a need there was for that. And so I was playing around with this idea of like 1-800-GOT-RENO, or like, that kind of idea.
Yeah.
And I played around with that idea in my head for about 10 years before I launched To Do Done. And just because, I have young kids, and it wasn't the right time to jump into the entrepreneurial life, and my husband was already in his own business, so it wasn't the right time. But then eventually I got to a point where I was in my career, halfway through my career, 16 years in the government. I just turned 40, and I said, you know what, if I'm not going to do it now, I'm never going to do it. So that was when I pulled the trigger.
And what was it like when you did that in that moment and in the following few months?
It was exciting for sure. I would say I had two different reactions from all of my colleagues in the government. Half of them said, "Oh, like that's amazing, good for you. Wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. I dream of doing something that I can really sink my teeth into and be really creative and go outside the box." The other half said, "What are you doing? You only have 14 years left before a full pension."
Okay.
A tale of two risk stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my parents actually were both on the side of the, what are you doing? You're so close to your pension in 14 years. But eventually they did support me. But I mean, it's way more work to be an entrepreneur, but the rewards are so much more too. So, and it's way more risk, but it's that risk reward that you have to balance out, and it's not for everyone.
No.
Right. What would you say to someone, Tonya, who has been in an organization for a little while and has been a professional, and has been having similar thoughts to what you've described about a business idea, and they're not sure whether to pull the trigger? What advice would you give that person?
Well, I think it has to work on lots of different levels. I mean, you have to go into it with your eyes wide open, in terms of what the financial risks are, and the personal risks are. So I would say if you're married or if you have a spouse, you need to have their support 100%, because if you don't, there are hard times, and you don't want to have them second guessing your decision. But putting together a business plan, working through the numbers, working through what is realistic in the first year, so that you don't set yourself up for failure. And also, I mean, I didn't pay myself for the first year. I didn't pay myself a cent for the first year. Going into it with some reserves, and knowing that you probably won't be able to pay yourself, or at least not at the same level, for at least a year, that's something to for sure take into consideration. And if you feel like you can do all of that, then you're ready.
So when you talk about risk and how there's a lot more work, more rewards, how do you what's your mechanism to make decisions in difficult times? under, with a lot of uncertainty, or how does that work for you?
Wow. It's, I get a lot of, I'm lucky that I live with somebody who is an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur. So my husband is very good at taking the time out we actually set aside meeting times. And he and I will meet to talk business, and we get out our profit and loss statement, and we get out, we set goals for the quarters. Like we're very diligent at meeting on a regular basis, having specific key performance indicators that we're looking at. Even for a while, when I had some hard times, we looked at key performance indicators bi-weekly. We had a bi-weekly Monday lunch meeting, and he would come to my office, or I would go to his office, and we would sit down and look at KPIs. And he was, because he cares so much, and he would take the time out to do that, and nobody else knew the business as well as he did, right, outside of myself. So that was really helpful for decision making. So I try to make decisions based on the numbers, but sometimes it is, you can get pulled into the emotional side, like if you really like a person, or if you really want to keep somebody happy or do something, yes, or if you have like an emotional connection to the vision, the larger vision, and you want to put all your energy there, you have to kind of pull yourself back and look at the numbers and say, does it make sense? For example, I was planning on opening a second location in 2020. In the fall of 2020 was my plan to open a second location of To Do Done in the Greater Toronto area. So for 6 months pre-COVID, I was looking at all the different ways in which I can build the brand, build all the marketing collateral to be able to launch a second location. Well, when COVID hit, I let go of my entire staff except for one person. I had to completely rethink the entire situation, and I've been building my staff back up since then. But at this point, I know that dream of the second location and growth, essentially it was going to be growth across the country, that's all sort of put on the back burner for now. Until we can stabilize here in Ottawa, it doesn't make sense for me to just go after that dream.
Sure.
So that's the kind of thing where you have to just look at the numbers. Go at the numbers. If the numbers make sense, do it. If they don't make sense, it doesn't, don't pursue it, or else you'll set yourself up for failure.
Tonya, if you think about your entire journey based on where you started and where you are today, To Do Done, can you describe any key difference makers or moments that made a big difference in propelling your business forward? Or maybe major decisions or something that happened where if it didn't, you wouldn't be where you are today?
Mm-hmm. Well, one, there's been a few turning points in our company. When we started, I really started as a handyman service. I felt like that was the gap, that was the need. And from my own personal experience as a homeowner and not having the service that I expected or wanted from that kind of handyman services, we started there, and we got a very good start in that we were asked by someone at the National Gallery of Canada had used us in their home, or they found us online, or somehow they connected to us, and they suggested that we apply for a standing offer with them. And we applied, and we won the standing offer. And so we became the handyman service of the National Gallery of Canada in our first 6 months of existence. So that was fantastic because it gave us steady work. So we have 2 people there 3 days a week, every week in, week out, and we have done so now for almost 5 years. But it not only did it give us some stability in terms of ongoing revenue, it gave us a lot of confidence and credence with potential new clients, like to say, hey, like the National Gallery is using us. Certainly, you can use us at your home. But then I did find after a couple of years, the folks that were on my team, they're highly skilled tradespeople, and they don't want to just do small handyman services. So we had to build up a reputation to be able to take on bigger jobs. So we started taking on things that at the time seemed like fairly big projects, which was like a gut and redo of a bathroom. But now that seems like a small project to us, where we're gutting and redoing entire houses. So to transition to those things, it was slow and steady. It wasn't like we just dove in one day and said, we're gonna rip apart this house and redo it for you. We had to start slow and steady. We started with some minor, remodeling of people's bathrooms, and then it became a full gut and redo, and then it became kitchens, and then it was bathrooms, then it was basement suites, then it was, entire homes, and we've built ourselves up to that. And having my team having the ability to do that, and my confidence in the team so that we can promote ourselves as that, has just kind of built over time. But it was definitely a conscious pivot point at about 2 years into the business, where we said, you know what, the handyman services, you can only make so much money on each transaction, and B, it isn't exactly what our team is capable of or wants to do every day for the rest of their career. So
right. So when you talked about your team and having confidence in your team to go out and brand yourself and promote and grow the kind of work you're doing, how do you find people to work with you? And tell me a bit about your culture. There's some information on your website that kind of leads me there, but why don't you?
Yeah.
If you're ridiculously happy doing these things, you'll want to work with us. I think that's one of the lines I saw.
Yeah. Well, I when I was doing business planning 6 years ago, so before I even opened the company, I found online, I found this program through YMCA. It's a skilled trades program for immigrants, new immigrants to Canada. And I got quite interested in that program. I reached out to the coordinator. I kept in touch with them, and I eventually ended up on the advisory board for the skilled trades, immigrants and trades, I think it's what it's called, immigrants and trades in Canada, for the YMCA. So I'm on their advisory board as an employer, and they have this awesome program where they bring in, folks from around the world who have immigrated to Ottawa. Some of them are, civil engineers from Ethiopia, or electricians from Iraq, or you name it. They bring them in for a 6-month program. Part of that program is English training and training on sort of Canadian culture and finding a job in Canada and job culture in Canada. But half of it, or more than half of the days, they spend learning how to do things in the Canadian context. So so they all have these booths, and they build up a booth. They frame it, they drywall it, they frame in a window, they put in a shower, they put in a drain, they put in some electrical. And then they learn how to demo it. So take it all down and then build it all up again. So they do that over the course of 6 months, and so they learn a little bit of everything. And because I've been involved in the organization, I tend to get one of the first picks of this class. So the class is it depends on the year, but 30 to 60 students. And so I get to walk around and meet all the students, and I hear from the teachers some feedback on, who's been the most reliable, who shows up every day, what are their skill sets like, what are they really good at? They kill it on drywall repairs, or they kill it on tiling. They're really great tilers. So I kind of look at what are my needs in my team, and you know what, we really need a great tiler. So
Brilliant.
Find those guys. They come straight out of the training, and I get my pick of them, and they're fantastic. My team is so diverse, and most of it is because of this program. I do have someone from Ethiopia, someone from Iraq. I've had someone from Korea, and it's a big mix. I also try to attract a lot of women, because there are very few women in skilled trades, but a lot of them, so I have a few women on my team, and those who have come to work for me have said that they've found it very hard to work in the trades, because it is kind of an old boys club, and they don't feel comfortable sometimes on job sites. And so I think with the way in which I've built my team has been sort of non-traditional. And me being a female in construction is a non-traditional leadership in that field to begin with.
Right.
And so our team has just built this culture of, there's like no machismo, there's no like arrogance of the male dominated sort of construction company.
Right.
In my whole, like what I hope our whole team brings, and what I've heard from our clients, is that like we really care, and B, we're here, as a service provider. We're here to provide the service, and we care about the customer service side of things. So that's the kind of culture I've tried to build. And in bringing and onboarding people, I pair them up with somebody who's been here for a long time, so that just gets built in to the new people that join our team, so that they understand that, no, we don't leave a mess when we leave the place, or we don't just let things go, or ignore something that should have been fixed, but we just don't feel like doing it because it's 4:30 in the afternoon, we want to get home, or whatever. Like, it's about building that into your culture, and then you attract more people, and then you really quickly realize the ones who don't fit, because you hear from the other guys that, you know what, he just leaves a mess wherever he goes. Well, guess what? I'm not keeping him then. So,
yeah.
And as your business has grown and you've added to your staff, have you run into any challenges in terms of maintaining that culture that you just outlined and keeping it the way it is?
For sure, we've struggled. I've made some bad hires, for sure, and like, they just don't fit in, and it becomes pretty apparent. And so that's one of the hardest things I think about being an entrepreneur, is staffing, and getting, the old adage is, hire slow and fire fast.
Mm-hmm.
But it's hard to do when you have a business need for someone and you need to get someone in there. You end up hiring faster than you'd want to. You might not do the due diligence, and it does cost you in the end. It can cost your reputation, it can cost you financially, but you do have to. I've learned that keeping the bad apples around is not a good idea. So I'm getting better at weeding those out quicker and hiring slower.
Yes.
But yeah, it affects the culture if you get the wrong person in, for sure. So you have to be really, really careful about that.
Yeah. So when we actually met you, Tonya, you've been selected as a finalist for the Businesswoman of the Year Awards. I just wonder, what that experience has been like for you up to now, and how that's informed your business or helped your business.
Well, I was shocked. Honestly, I had no idea that I was going to be a finalist. I was totally underdressed compared to everyone there. But I also I still am kind of shocked by it. But I am flattered, and I feel so blessed to be part of this. When I look around at the women who are part of the network and that were nominated and everything, I mean, I'm just, anyway, humbled by it, let's say. But it occurred, I think, in February, and then COVID hit. I was, away on a vacation. Luckily, got that squeezed in right before COVID.
Oh.
So I was away for a week or two, and then came back, and then basically had to let go of my whole staff. And I literally, the phone stopped ringing for weeks. Construction actually shut down in Ontario from April till mid-May. Yeah. So we couldn't do anything. We're at a huge loss situation. And I literally, partway through that, thought, my goodness, I'm gonna have to shut this company down. And how does that look for Businesswoman of the Year? And it was kind of, it was scary. And so I can't say that it's necessarily, it's never a bad thing to have that as a point of, just being able to show that you
recognition.
Recognition, exactly. But at the same time, COVID has thrown the whole world off. So I can't say it's really benefited me in any way, but it's also probably not hurt me. Except that I think that in a way, it kind of just did keep me going during that period, where I kind of would have said, forget it, I'm out. But then how ironic would it have been if, I get the award for the businesswoman of the year, and yet I shut down in April, right? So it kind of just did give me a little boost during that time where it was like, I give up. Well, actually, no, I can't give up because what example would that be?
So dramatic, right? Like what's happened with this pandemic and the economic shutdown that's accompanied it is totally, as everyone says, unprecedented. Yes, that's a well-used term, but it's startling. And there's a divide between the businesses that could operate and the businesses that could not. And it had nothing to do with your business acumen or your culture or your qualities of service or anything. It just had to do with, you were just told you couldn't operate.
Yeah.
Yeah, very, very tough for to be in a situation like that, for sure. Mm-hmm. So what are your, one of the things that's on your website is taking revenue and setting it aside for families in need. Is that the best way to describe it? Maybe you can describe it for us.
Yeah, I mean, the premise was really for us to take 1% of our revenue and put it aside for people who need repairs and yet can't afford it. So we've actually tended to do a lot more work for nonprofit organizations than we have for homeowners, simply because I guess they're just more aware of the program. And so we've been able to support a couple of different organizations, such as Women's Shelter, who, simple things like installing air conditioners in windows in a women's shelter. I mean, it's just having the labor and having somebody to be able to do it. So we've done that for, pro bono. We did a project at the Ronald McDonald House, which is right beside CHEO. It's a home that houses families with children in long-term cancer treatments. And so the family can come and live there while their child is at CHEO. And they just have people who sometimes live there for months at a time, and a lot of their rooms were, just showing their age and needed some upgrades. So we worked with the Ronald McDonald House on that, and that was
amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah, and there was a couple of other organizations, church organizations, and that kind of thing, who just just don't have the funds, but they still have buildings they have to maintain. They still have work they need to do. And so we have the team to do it. So it's essentially as opposed to them having to fundraise to be able to maintain their buildings, or provide those things for their clients, they can just call upon us, and if we have it in our budget, then we can support them through the What If Fund. So that's how we've been tending to use that fund. And I think, in a way, I love being able to offer up our team to do things, to say, yeah, it's on us. We'll get her done for you. But I think our team too, they love to be able to contribute to something. And a lot of my team, many of them are immigrants, many of them have families. Like, they don't have a lot of extra money to give to organizations, but they can give their skills, right? So they get a chance to donate as well. So
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So if you have you say you don't have a lot of families that access the service because maybe they don't know about it. So how would they access it? If people are listening and they know someone who needs this, do they just connect with your company?
Yeah, through our website, there is a Google form that they can fill in, or they could contact us through our 1-800 number, or our email, our general email. And yeah, just let us know what the issue is, and how we can help. And we would just make sure that it's fitting all the criteria.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like, there are some people, they have to be the homeowner though. So a lot of times, I've just found, that's the difference, is if you're already a homeowner, then you're usually in a better financial situation. So it's the NGOs, the nonprofit organizations that have buildings that just either, they have to get volunteers or fundraising to be able to pay for them. So that's how it's made it easier for us to support those. So
what do you need now? I mean, you're starting to rebuild your activity level from February, March. But what do you, and what do you personally, the company, what do you need now?
You know what? I've been so grateful for the government support through COVID. I mean, it's been amazing. But what we need going forward is stability, which it's hard to know when that's going to come. There's a lot of uncertainty as to whether or not there's going to be a second wave of COVID, or if there will be more restrictions. In our field, we do services in people's homes.
Right.
So it's a lot of contact. We have to be physically working in their homes. So, but what we need is stability in the economy.
And a few client inquiries.
That's it. We need clients to keep coming back, and we need stability in our workforce. So that's what we need. But we're slowly getting there. I think I've been able to take. It's interesting because with COVID, I mean, our company was growing by 60 to 65% every year. And this year we had intended to, and we're on track to grow by another 60%. And COVID wiped that out. But it actually has taken the pressure off me in some ways. And I've tried to focus on what do we do well? How can we build a company that is going to be profitable despite everything? And so it's not necessarily about just growth for growth's sake. It's about growing for stability. So
Interesting. Particularly with all this uncertainty.
yeah.
So stressful time.
Yeah.
Hectic life being an entrepreneur anyway. 2 entrepreneurs in the family.
Yeah.
But can you share any thoughts on, like just how you make sure you're okay? Financially, family, whatever. What do you do? The term, I guess, is self-care.
A lot of my self-care is around being active in nature. Like I bike, I swim, I hike, I paddle, I ski, you name it, I do it outside in nature. And that's my go-to. So even this morning, got up, I live on Meech Lake. I'm extremely, extremely privileged to live there. It's just beautiful spot, and had coffee on the dock, and then did yoga on the dock and swam across the lake and back, and got back to my house at 7:25 in the morning. So that kind of thing, that kind of start to the day, it keeps me sane and grateful, and like just full of gratitude, and healthy, and mentally and physically healthy. And so that's my go-to.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. So we had one thing left we were going to ask for sure, Brady. I don't know if you have any others, but.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we ask on this podcast, Tonya, it's a bit of a theme, is whether or not you either personally or through your business have a lesson you'd like to share as it relates to money throughout your entrepreneurial journey.
Oh yeah, I mean it kind of comes down to the funds available. And I would say, for me, never live beyond your means, and never run a business beyond the business's needs. I know a lot of businesses that borrow a lot of money up front. I chose not to do that at all. I bootstrapped, and I'm 5 years in, and I've never taken a loan. I've never I don't know anyone anything. I've never given up equity in my company. Bootstrapped to the point where we were doing almost 2 million in sales every year. But I started small, and you just got to be efficient. And so I think it applies personally as well as professionally. Don't spend more than you have, and don't give up equity very easily.
That's great. Those are great points. Obviously key to your success.
Well, I mean, I think you can grow a lot faster if you borrow money. So that's a different strategy, though. For me, I've always just tried to live below my means and always have something left over for a rainy day. That's just my philosophy. And it means that I'm not the biggest company, and I'm not going to be the biggest company. But even starting a second location, I was only going to do so if I had cash in the bank to do so. I wasn't going to do so on the backs of a big loan. So that was how I was going to grow. And if I was going to grow nationally, it was going to be by, simply through the revenue that I've been able to gain. And if it's not going to happen, that's okay. Change course.
Right. Great information.
That's great. It's a great conversation. Thank you for being interested. It's lovely to be part of this.
It goes beyond us. There's a lot of appetite for these kind of stories. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for doing this.
Real treat to talk to you. Thanks for spending the time with us.
Okay.
All right.
Have a great day.